Stand-up comedy. It's a unique thing that most people just can't do. A lot of people have tried, and a lot of people have failed. No one seems to be more dedicated to the stand-up comedy genre than women of color. I've seen them go through a lot of things just to make people laugh. So in this documentary, I'm going to highlight those things, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, my name is Josie the Comedian, and I've been doing comedy ever since 2009.
Now these babies are excited to be out. They just excited to be yeah! Hello.
I started doing comedy because I always been on stage. I used to sing when I was in middle school all the way up into high school. From 6th grade to 10th grade, I was always on stage. I always did plays when I was in elementary school, and I was a class clown in college. So comedy was pretty much my next calling. Everybody used to always tell me, girl, you so crazy. So, you know, I got on stage one night, and that was the end of that.
I'm a 50 babies, ass. 1919 babies, ass.
The first place I got on stage, or the first place I should say I got on stage, was this place called Raleigh Metro Bar and Lounge, which is in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. One of my college friends, his name is Flick Brown. He always wanted me to use his comedy name, Flick Brown. He pulled me on stage, actually. He gave me my first shot at going on stage. And I remember I made the crowd laugh, and after that, I just kept going.
So was you nervous the first time you went?
Absolutely. I wasn't even going to get up there. I went drinking. I used to go after work with my homegirl. We had drinks or whatever. We used to go down there all the time. And I was right buzzed. And I told her, I was like, you know I'm supposed to go up there, right? And I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And shout out to my homegirl, Joey. She was like, girl, if you don't get up there, I'm going to hurt you. So she made me go on stage. And I went up there and I did what I know comes naturally. And I do this African voice because I'm half African. My dad is from Congo and my mom was from Ahoskie, North Carolina. So I did this voice. And once I did the voice, the crowd just fell out.
What I am here to tell you today is that I love you very much. And it is so glad for you to be here tonight.
I did this joke about how African men always try to holler at me, and they do. I don't know if they can smell it, that I got a little African in me or something, but they always try to holler at me, and they always say, hey baby, let me talk to you, please. Let me talk to you.
So my name is Brandy Brown, and I manage Goodnight's Comedy Club.
All right, and how long have you been doing comedy or involved in comedy?
I've been working here since 2006. But before I even started here, I used to do improv theater back when I was like 14. I grew up doing theater arts, and so that always kind of goes hand in hand. You have drama and you have comedy. I grew up acting, so I'm familiar, very familiar with comedy.
I'm going to bring up your headliner, but before I do, can you guys give a round of applause for your wait staff?
All right, so you already know. A lot of people, they don't even know you know them, but
right.
You know them. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with how they act at other venues. I'm familiar with how they treat just the people around them. So like I have notes on people, and you have to, because at the end of the day, I run a business, and you can have someone who's really, really funny, but if they're or they're awful to be with, I don't want to be around you for 4 days, and I'm not going to put the staff around you for 4 days, and I don't want to put you with the headliner that people are coming to see for 4 days. That's just what it is.
My legal name is Carmelita L. Irby, aka Carmen. As a comedian, my name is Carmen Dlight. I'm a newbie as a stand-up comedian in the comedy world, especially in North Carolina. What really pays the bills is I own a couple of businesses. One of them, I'm an independent paralegal, legal research paralegal. I'm a promoter, I do graphic design, I'm executive assistant, personal assistant to VIP, and I have a couple of VIP clients. A couple of them are comedians, established comedians. I'm a mother. That's the most important job for me.
I'm like,
I love her energy right here in the front. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God, she would have told my set up. You know what I'm saying?
Hi, my name is Olivia Ford. Olivia Ford. I have been doing comedy now 7 years.
What made you get into comedy?
This thing called menopause. This thing called menopause. Menopause for women. Midlife crisis for men. But in menopause, it was new. It's new to me.
Society said kids can divorce their parents. She know.
Well, my jokes go way back from childhood to current situations that I've been in through the marriages and just everyday life. But menopause started that. But let me say that, because all my life I wanted to be a comedian. All my life. Grew up silly, you know. So all my life I wanted to be a comedian. But it wasn't until this thing called menopause, when I went to the doctor and they said I had started menopause, that I had to find out how to get on stage and how to open up and let women know about this thing called change.
I told y'all about my daughter, didn't you? Tell me, Mom, I know you're going through the change of life and I'm trying to be patient with you.
I tell stories. That's my line of jokes, are stories.
Hey, so I'm Tamika Dixon, stage name Country T. Got in comedy a few years ago as I've done corporate events, and I started in church. Always like introducing the keynote speakers or being a host. And a coworker urged me to, do stand-up, take it on stage.
One thing about black people, you downstairs. You're not going upstairs, you downstairs. And if you ask to go to our bathroom, we gotta go in there first. You know what I mean?
I think when I got into it, I didn't expect it to be such a cliquey group of people. You have people who do certain open mics or do certain shows, and they're on all these different shows, but it's only in one area. It's a lot of cliques, and it's kind of like, it's almost like being back in high school again. It's like the cool kids versus the kids who are really trying to get known versus the nerds and things like that. It's kind of funny that it's such a cliquish society.
I would say get out. Well, get out, but like get out and do more mics, get out and be seen, get out and socialize, because there's so many people that sometimes before they even hit the stage, they come and case a place out. There's something to be said about being part of the hang, the people that you talk to or you get to know. Sometimes if they're familiar with you at a mic, they like your stuff, they come out and support the other things that you're doing, and then other people come and do that, and before you know it, you have 5 people that you've been networking with, and you had no idea that those 5 people have their own show that they're doing, and they like what you're doing. But you can never tell that from someone from seeing them once, even 3 times. I base it on 3 to 5 times of your best sets that I've seen.
Being a part of a group, is always good. But if you're a part of a group that will not help you, because you're like, I'm the type of person, I always try to help, in whatever way I can. But if you're in a group or in a clique, like they say, that's not trying to help you, that's not good. And there are cliques out here. Everybody tries to be in one. I do have somebody in general that I kick it with. I call him my comedy brother. Y'all already, know his name, Robert Wright.
When you're on a team, everybody is happy for everybody. Everybody mentors and calls and shows up to shows, and it's not just like, oh, I'm all about mine. I'd rather be on a team of fellow comedians than in a clique. I'm too old for all the cliquish stuff that's happening, that I've witnessed, I've heard. I witnessed something a few months ago. There was a young man who, before I became a comedian, stand-up comedian, I actually saw this young man at a show, and he hosted. And he wasn't a great host, but I was critiquing him. This is something, a habit I have. And I pulled him aside at the end of the show and I said, you know what? I don't know if he was nervous or whatever. I was talking with him. I said, but you know what? I can tell that you have the drive. I can tell that you want this. And give it 2 years. And within 2 years, he has rose. And every time I see him, I tell him I'm proud of him, this and that. But it seemed like he still have that clique mentality, because I saw him on a Facebook Live thing one day and he literally was putting like this city against this city. And that's when I went like, oh man, come on.
And I have another comedy brother that I kick it with, Dink, Donnell, you know what I'm saying, Kearney, I hang out with him. But it's not like a cliquish thing. We get along with everybody, but we do hang around each other and we do our own thing. But you do have those groups in Raleigh that do not go outside of their group. You will only see them with the comics that they hang with.
We are all too grown, you know. There's no little kids. There's little-minded mentalities, yes. But there's no kids in this game, in this profession, in this industry, in this career for that. Like, I wish when you reach when you see yourself developing and you get a certain age, you just need to leave that clique stuff alone. And if you around anyone that has that clique mindset, and I'm not saying all of the mature ones have it, because you still have some that's just the way that they think or are. But it's going to be very hard for you to get to that next level in the industry. There's levels to this. With that mentality, you're going to look around one day and the ones that you held down are not going to be around because they're not holding you down. And you're going to be like, man, but you're going to look over at the ones that's on the team. When you think team mentality, it's like, you know, when not so much when I win, we all win, but it's like we all nurture each other. We all have that spirit for each other to be successful. You know, there's like, man, you know, I won't say there's no jealousy or something like that. It's just like, to me, it's really genuine care, concern, support. We all share, you know, each other's, we may not make it to the show, but, you know, we all share stuff on social media, you know, not just, well, I'm not on that show, so I'm not going to share it. I mean, okay, it's no problem.
It's general, you know, you have certain females who hang around a certain group of guys and vice versa. So I would say just generally it's always just cliquish, period.
I know a list of people who are constantly complaining and they do not come to writer's blocks. They don't come to open mics. They don't come to shows. They don't come to the local show Wednesday. They don't come to the second open mic that we have late night for people who can't make it on Tuesdays at 8, and they don't come to the local shows. They don't come in here at shows. The only time I hear their names are when I hear they're complaining.
So what's one thing you notice that female comedians go through that male comedians don't go through?
Well, the number one problem, there's probably a few, but let's start with one.
Sleep with them in order to get on shows. You know, some of the promoters will put it to you, and then they don't come out right out and say it, but I had one promoter that said, had me lined up for at least good 6 months of shows. And then he eventually said, like, you know, so when we gonna spend some time together, you know, quality time? And I was, what you mean? Now, ain't you a married man? Yeah, but we need to spend some time together. So it was boiled down to it. He wanted me to sleep with him. And no, I'm not doing that. And I told him, I said, listen, I don't have to I'm funny. You know? So he took me off of those shows. You know he did.
Guys always trying to holler at you. always trying to get with you. All you beautiful, all you cute. And none of them seem to be thinking about the business. All of them want to get in your pants or figure out how they can turn you into a groupie.
And I know because I would hear the promoters brag. And they won't use you after that, no matter what services you provide, how good you are or were. And this is the thing, a lot of the women, they would give up the sex before the show. The show can get canceled. They can cancel you performing. And what did you just get out of that?
I would say, and I have my personal experience, I've been, I'm always sexually harassed. And when I mean sexually harassed, I don't mean it in a way of, oh, if you do this, I'll get you on my show, kind of. It's more so of, let me try to make it plain, it's more so of grabbing and just automatically feeling that, oh, we're comic family or we're comedian family, so I have the right to touch you inappropriately or say inappropriate things to you. Because you know I'm a comic and it's funny. Ha ha ha.
But yeah, it's tough out here for a female because everybody feel like you should sleep with them or they want to sleep with you. Everybody, all the guys, they really do. They really do. Married and all, they want you, yeah, you got to sleep with them. But we're not doing that.
So let me ask you something. A lot of the female comedians say that the male party promoters are always trying to sleep with them and make sexual advances towards them. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, no, nothing about that. Me personally, there's not a female comic who I've ever worked with, have had any sexual relations. I may say something slick to them. If they fine, I'm going to say something. I'm a man, they're a woman. Hey, I'm going to say something. That's just me. But as far as just anything physical, no, I would never do that. Me personally.
Do you find that female comedians feel like they need to keep their guard up when they first meet a promoter?
Well, I mean, all women should keep their guard up, but I mean, the nature of the game is if you can come up and you can do something to come up, hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
So what do you think about female comedians starting to promote themselves and doing their own parties and getting together and just making their own events up? Do you think that's something they should do or something they can do? What do you think?
I've always asked myself that question. If I was a comedian, I would. A lot of comedians don't do a lot of promoting themselves, and that's another thing I don't understand. A lot of them don't. Some do, but if that's your craft, why wouldn't you go all out to promote yourself? Like, for instance, Coco Brown. She's all over the place. She live. She doing it. Shout out to my sister. I love you, baby. That's one of my favorite comedians as well.
So, what about internet comedians versus stand-up comedians?
Hey, a lot of these regular comedians is hating on these internet comedians. But hey, you can't knock the hustle, baby. Hey, if that's how they got on, that's how they got on. I know a lot of comics who's hating on these internet comedians. A lot. Just got off the phone with one about 30 minutes ago.
For those who don't know, internet comedians are comedians who use social media to promote themselves. They usually do skits and different type of stand-up comedy just to get themselves promoted. And it's working so far.
Internet comics are like basically the future. I read and I hear a lot of comics has been doing comedy 30, 25 years and they be a little salty because, all you have to do now is have a lot of followers on social media.
I would prefer to book someone who has a large following and is at least 50% funny.
So that's like a double-sided sword. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and I talk to a lot of comics about it, where it's about followers now. Because it's the same thing with acting. It no longer matters how much training you've had or how long you've been doing it, or if you've been doing it as a kid. It's like, this girl has no experience. However, she's got 25,000 followers. We go on with her. I think that's kind of the same thing that you get more so now. What's really amazing, it's very rare, is that you find someone who blew up, they're on the internet and they have followers, but they're actually comics first. That shit's so good. But what happens when you get someone who comes in here who can sell a room out and maybe they're not a comedian or a comic? It's cool to get people in here or in a club where they get to see other people coming, or sometimes these people have never been to a club or a comedy show. So that's awesome that we're exposing people to that. But if the show is bad news, you lose some of those people because that's now what they think a comedy show is. But that keeps the club open. They can, they take that money that they made and you have like an overhead, because this all costs money to turn the lights and stuff on. So then you might have a comic who's really great. He's fantastic, the funniest man you've ever seen, but he can't sell any tickets. Well, we can still get people to come in here and watch the show and be exposed to him, and maybe he gains some fans if we can give a few tickets away or make some tickets cheaper and promo it, because we sold out 4 shows with the guy who wasn't as funny as you were. So
we don't use, and I'm not speaking across the board, but we don't use social media a lot, more so than the guys do, as far as like comedian, comic, and we kind of just get into the game doing the open mics, and then boom, we're stuck like kind of in a comedy group kind of thing. But as far as I've seen the rise of some female comedians via social media, and while I think they're funny and hilarious doing their videos, once they hit stage, it's kind of like they don't understand the culture and they don't understand the work that some people put into it. It's kind of like they're thrust into the limelight versus actually having to work to be in the limelight.
Number one, they need to make sure that they're organized. Number two, make sure that they have funny material. And number three, make sure that they market and advertise themselves.
A lot of times in my shows, it's my show. I'm a producer, and a lot of times the people I promote, people wants to see me, but I'm the host. And a lot of people say, well, we come to see you. We want to see you do a headliner set. I said, well, I promote the show. I'm putting these other comedians on. I'm just the host. And sometimes, when you the producer of the show, you make the rules. Folks, some people have I ain't gonna say complain, but other comedians are like, oh, Jay do a lot of time as a host, but it's my show. I pay the bills. I pay the cost to be the boss. You don't like it, you don't have to be on none of my shows. I get them in there. I said, you can choose not to be on my show or a show that I'm affiliated with and be seen in front of a lot of people, or you can just go do your open mic shows and have a room full of comedians watching your set.
So what happens with the host is, if they want to host, because sometimes they only want a 2-man show. In that case, if it's going to be a 2-man show, they usually bring, and that's kind of been what's happening progressively over the past, I would say 2 to 4 years, is that I don't know what's happening at other clubs, but Helium Good Nights, we pride ourselves on actually being familiar with, our headliners and being able to match them fairly well, bringing people who are funny. But what's been happening is headliners go out, and I guess they're having really horrible experiences with their middle act or even their host. I've heard so many horror stories. But they want to feel better about who's coming with them or who's going to be going up before them. Because one thing that sucks for a headliner is if you have a guy go up before you and he just kills all the laughter in the room, you then have to dig yourself out of that the first 10 to 15 minutes of your set, and no one wants to spend their time doing that. So people have been bringing, but when they don't bring, that's when they rely on me to book their middle act and their host.
Yeah, let me emphasize. If you're a new comedian, or whether you're an existing comedian who is maybe between 6 months and 3 years in the game, you need to be promoting yourself. You need to be promoting yourself and you need to be marketing yourself. Nobody's going to do that for you. You can't think, that because this is your 20th local show or your 50th local show that you've made it. Because you haven't made it.
And at the end of the day, they don't come find the comic who's on stage and complain to them. They come to me and my name comes up. And now I have to deal with that. So part of me booking people, it's about I have to have all these relationships with people. So it's like, if I know that I can trust you, well, that's their first building block. And I know that you're talented and you're funny, then it makes me feel more comfortable about putting someone on my stage and having them around.
So, is it true that if a comedian isn't funny, you won't pay them? Is that true?
Nah. If I book you, I will pay you. But I might say, look, let me holler at you over here in the back for a minute. We might have to negotiate something.
I have ran into a few promoters out here who have tried to take advantage of me as far as my money, my time, and my talent. I've had a couple of promoters lie on my name. I had one promoter who told one of the people that was trying to book me that I was transitioning into becoming a vegan, and that's why he needed some extra money to cover my expenses.
Speaking of internet comedians, would you pick a well-known internet comedian who really wasn't good at stand-up over a comedian from North Carolina who kills it every time on stage?
Yeah. Off the top. Country Wayne selling out everywhere he go. Everywhere he go. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely do that. It's about making money. I mean, we do it for the fun and love of it, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, if you invest in your money, you're going to recuperate your just due. You feel me?
So are you saying it's just business?
Yeah, hey, everybody, yeah, I know. I'm not trying to just put no money out there and take a loss. That don't make no sense. Who's going to invest money to take a loss?
My stage name is Tony Barbados. My name is Nigerian, is Oyama Galundo. So a lot of people, it's easier for them to say just Tony Barbados. I got into this comedy thing. My mother passed on Mother's Day 2 years ago. And on her deathbed, she came out of her mouth and saying, Yama, I want you to do comedy. At least do it for me. So I said, okay, I'll try it. So I'm only doing it out of honor for my mother to the full extent.
Since you're saying you're doing comedy for your mother and in honor of your mother, how do you view women who do comedy in North Carolina based on the women that you've seen so far?
The ones I see, I love them to death. I think it's the sex. I have a love for female comics and female DJs. It's almost like sex to me just to see them talk, be funny, because a lot of women nowadays, they're not funny. But then you have a female comic that has a natural part about it. I love them. I think they sexy, especially when they thick.
What stands out the most to you about female comedians in North Carolina? Is it the subject matter? Is it how they do the comedy?
Her hips. She got pretty hips. A nice if it's cold inside, she got hanging out a little bit. I don't care what she say, just if she cute. If she cute, I'm gonna listen to everything she say. And you know how the girls do. They laugh with you. They know you ain't funny, but they laugh at you because they think cute. I do the same thing. I give it right back to them.
Is it that you don't like that style of comedy or you don't like what they're talking about?
Some I think they just out there to say, hey, I want to do comedy. It's just like 50-year-old rappers. They're still trying to rap. So some people just need to sit down. So if you're not funny, sit down. Talk to your grandmama about your problems. I think they talk about a lot of problems. I love them.
You think female comics talk about a lot of problems?
Yes. Females. They talk about a lot of unnecessary problems. They talk about how men do them for what? That's your bad decision making. They ain't got nothing to do with that, man. That's just how I think. Hey, I'm new.
Have you been on shows with female comedians and noticed that they are treated different than men? For example, like how often they can get on stage and are they allowed equal stage time? Is there a difference in what type of comedy the female comedian does that might affect or dictate her stage time while she's up there?
Well, for me, it's a difference. If she looks good. It's a big difference if she looks good. And if she ugly, no one gives a say you got to be super funny. Because they looking at your ugly as a ugly. And I refuse to be the sucker that looks at you as cute. You know, we lie to you as comedians. We'll tell you that you're gorgeous. Like, I tell you you're cute every day because I know you got a good check. But other than that, you know, some of the women, they good comics, but they just cute. They real cute. And you don't care what they say. She can say what she wants. It's just gorgeous. I love it. I do. Especially they got some big meat to them. Big meat look good. Especially if it jingle. Jingle meat. I like jingle meat.
But what should female comedians focus on when they're doing comedy? I mean, what? What do you think?
Have some jingle meat if I'm showing up at the comedy show. Because if not, I ain't laughing unless they got some of that type of drinks.
So what would you tell a comedian, a female comedian just starting out, never done comedy before in her life, and really want to be a comedian? What advice would you give her as a fellow comedian yourself?
If she cute, I'm going to keep emphasizing that. I'm going to say, just give me your number. And I'll talk to you about this in your DM. That's just me. Because DMing is good advice. You can do it. When you do it in the face, I'm sorry. When you tell them in the face, they don't listen. But if you tell them in that DM, if you message them, they believe it. They go along with what you say. You can tell them, you know what, you look so good. And she could be an ugly monkey. She could look like one of them flying monkeys in the Wizard of Oz. But if you tell her she look good and you get her some cute guy attention, she will be famous. Look at that girl that played in Ghostbusters. I told her she was gorgeous. Now where she at? She ain't Ghostbusters no more.
For the male comedians who has a bone to pick with female comedians, I'm just gonna let you know this. We're not going nowhere. We're increasing. We've always been in the game. We just weren't allowed to have a mic or a spotlight. If you study comedy back in the early 1800s, there's this thing called vaudeville. I may be saying it wrong. But women was always in entertainment, not just as you see them as vixens, but in the circus and you know, jazz. I mean, women, we're here to stay. We're here to stay in comedy. You're more than welcome to your opinion, but your opinion doesn't matter to us. So
a black female comedian got to do triple the things I would say any comedian got to do. Because it's almost like they're at the bottom of the totem pole. I don't think that, but I'm just saying that's just the way the comedy world sees them. And they have to do so much, man. It's just unreal, man. I see so many black female comedians that are funny, and I be like, yo, you should be on this level right here. And they be like, well, I'm not, because I won't go sleep with this promoter, and I won't kiss this other promoter's behind, and I ain't gonna do this and that.
We called it joning back in the day. Joning. What they call it today? Roasting. I don't like that, but that's my best material. Now, you want to see funny, let me joan. Let me roast, rather. Because I did a roasting contest, and I won $250. And some of them guys are still mad at me today from the roasting. Because I roast them so bad. I mean, I talked about them so bad. And but I don't like to do that. And that's why I never do picking with the crowd. Sarcastic comedy is what it's called. Where people that come in and don't have jokes, don't have material. So they pick with the crowd. Look at this shirt. Look at this, and that. I don't like that. I stay away from that type of comedy. Because I feel like somebody paid to come to the show to see the show, and then you become a part of the show. I don't like that. So I never will become a part of that.
They need to write new material every day. If this is your craft, then you need to be in the market of perfecting your craft every day. You know, it's okay to use some of the same material when you're coming up, you know, maybe one or two shows. But after the 6th or 7th show, it is definitely time to start writing.
I've heard of some established female comedians, mainstream, stealing other comedians' jokes and blatantly using them as their own. At that point, me personally, I lose respect for you as a comedian, as a woman, as an artist. In the business, would you do your personal time, personal side? It's not my business, but in the business part of it, I lose respect for you.
Even as a black woman, you stand out to me more because I want that to be a thing that I see on the stage. But I'm not just going to put you on the stage because you're a black woman perceivably doing comedy. That's not how this works. I wouldn't do that. If I were to just put someone on stage because they were just black and just a woman, and they're holding a microphone and they had no jokes, that's when people start losing their jobs. That's when customers start complaining that the opener or the host wasn't funny, because people love to Yelp in these days. People like to call and complain these days. And part of my job is finding the best and putting them on that stage so that I can have job security.
So when you write, like you're doing your comedy, what inspires you when you're writing your jokes and putting everything together? What inspires you?
I do a lot of comedy, of course, about my family, and because, they're the closest to me. My son, just my day-to-day life and the things that I run into. So I guess my life as a whole kind of it just inspires me and makes it funny, or something happens and it kind of just clicks like, oh gosh, that would be a funny set. So
the game's not the same that it used to be. It's just not. So there's different avenues. People peak at different times, and not all of them are funny, even though they have fans and they'll come out and buy tickets. That's just what it is. But let's say you do a special, and so now you got these 45 minutes or an hour that are just out there, and everyone can see them. Maybe start writing some new jokes. Or if you're just doing the same 10 minutes, after a while, people are going to know that that's your 10 minutes. This past December, we had a fan, a diehard fan, but they left behind a napkin of how many new jokes this person had actually written since the time before and the time before that. I think it was over the course of I want to say 5 to 8 years. And it was only did 2 new jokes. Yeah, and so you have that, but there's a comic that I saw back in the day who was actually may still have a show in Vegas and older, but I watched a clip of him. I remember loving the show so much, and I watched it 5 times because you can't help yourself. You're just in the room working. And then I was like, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Then I saw a clip of them. I was watching a documentary from when they were 20, 25 maybe. So we're talking about, I'll say 15, 20 years, because I didn't know how old he was at the time. Same set.
A male can tell a dirty joke, but when a female tell a dirty joke, she looked at dirty, So I stay away from dirty jokes, really. I only say a certain amount of things. I don't never get rated R. Let me put it that way. I'm not rated R, never. Because you looked at different when you rated R.
A lot of people, and this is just, like I said, my experience, they tend to frown upon women telling vulgar or being very vulgar or being overly aggressive.
Why do you think that is?
Because society wants us to always remain ladylike, no matter what they say. They still want us to remain ladylike.
And not only that, because today they having where they bringing everybody to comedy shows, the grandma, the preachers, different people are in settings now, because comedy is going everywhere. I'm talking about the churches. I'm talking about the family reunions. Comedy is everywhere now. And they want to have their family out there to deal when you want to talk about sexual jokes. They don't want to hear it. They really don't. Period. Not just from males or not just from females, but male as well. They don't want to hear them. They really don't.
My biggest pet peeve: if you're a comic, be a comic. But at the end of the day, you have to keep getting extra and better material, different material. If you got the same material, if you're a comic out there, there's no reason why the people in the audience should be finishing your punchline. I mean, I understand you got to do the same jokes, but if you 3, 4, 5 years in the game and you still delivering the same material, being a comic is not for you.
I wouldn't say it's a difference between. It's a difference between culture, you know. For as like we are most black, whether you male, female, or what we call urban style comics. And yes, there's a difference in comedy style between black female and a white female, or Indian or Chinese. Because of the situations. When comics get on stage, most of the time we talk about something that has happened in our lives or happened to somebody that we know. And as urban style comics, the urban community relates to that.
Sometimes it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes you can start out urban and enter into the mainstream. You know, you take somebody like Mike Epps. Mike Epps started out urban, but he has integrated into the mainstream now. You take somebody like Wanda. I don't know her last name, but you know, she's been on TV. Mm-hmm. She started out mainstream, but she intersected into the urban network. You know, mm-hmm. Chris Rock kind of the same. You know, he started out urban. Because, you know, he really got his full throttle on New Jack City. So, you know, that's urban.
With a black audience, they want you to continuously make them laugh. And when I mean laugh, they want you to curse. They want you to carry on and talk about vulgarity. Whereas white people can relate to different things in different walks of life. And they're just looking for people to be funny, not necessarily raunchy.
Hey, you got to be funny. You know how it is. I mean, it's just like the Apollo. You on Apollo half-stepping, you're going to get booed off the stage, you know? And that's urban.
No, I never been booed. I went to Atlanta one weekend at the comedy club up there. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I was up there at the comedy club, and this one comedian kept saying, "You're going to get booed," because I was quiet. I wasn't saying anything. Everybody else was chattering. I wasn't saying much because, see, I'm thinking. I'm getting my set together in my head. He said, "You're going to get booed when you go up there. You're going to get booed." I'm like, who booing people? Who booing people really? Who actually booing people? was my question. But no, I never been booed. I was heckled before downtown. This one guy kept talking. He kept saying something. Every time I say something, he say something. Every time I say something, he say something. I was like, "Sir, can you chill out? Let me get my show over with."
I think it's when people boo because it's like, oh, you think you're so great? Get up there and try it.
So, you know, everybody knows that when it comes to this market, the urban market, you better have your stuff together. If not, the critics are waiting to demolish you.
So it doesn't happen very often because for the most part, if you're buying a ticket to the show, you like that person. You've seen something that you like. And most people can be, but for the most part, unless they've been drinking a lot or they're just looking for a fight or they want some attention, no one's actually booing anyone. With that being said, I think it's just like a known thing. It's not known everywhere, but I think people get better at it. You don't talk while someone else is talking. And, you know, if you want something to say, you want to hold a microphone in your hand or feel some type of way, go out and do a mic. You go do it.
They like to try to say urban. I'm gonna be honest. This is what I think. This is my opinion. Now I could be a little bit wrong, but this is what I've heard in my opinion of dealing with it. Urban is black comedy.
But honestly, me personally, I don't see comedy as a color.
So it's not a color, it's just the content?
It's pretty much, yeah, right. It's the content, but it's also, like you said, the the groups of people that come out. I mean, because urban comedy, believe it or not, I mean, you have comedians like Gary Owens. You know, he's a white comedian, but he's mainstream. But he can go to an all black club and his material relates to them. They can relate to what he's talking about, and he can have a great show. He can go mainstream, and again, there's other people there that can relate to what he's saying. So that's what you call that crossover. He can crossover. You have some comedians who they can only tell jokes. Let's just say they're from the hood. They're from the hood. They can only tell jokes and stories about living in the hood.
But I've seen white comics curse, Indian comics curse. I mean, you have so much comedy right now. I don't see how people can try to label, because I think funny is funny. No matter who telling a joke, if you're funny, you're funny. I mean, you may slip up and say a cursing word from time to time, but like I said, funny is funny. So for somebody to tell me that I'm an urban comic, like I said, and I can come in any room and move the crowd, whether they are white or black, Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Mexican, Cuban, you know, don't put that label on me. But I guess as a comedy, in a comedy genre, because you probably would see me hanging around and doing more black rooms, then you would probably classify me as an urban comic.
I know it works, and sometimes you want to challenge people to see what they can do. Like, audiences are great and they're easy when, you know, they're going to laugh at your stuff. But what's a little bit harder is winning over a room full of people that maybe aren't your demographic. For instance, like this past weekend, Linnell was here. Her opener's Brian Deans, and Brian is one of my friends. He's a comic who he comes out all the time. For years, Brian puts the work in. And he's a white guy. And so he goes up in front of a room full of black people, and he talks about this too. He's like, he says something too. He's like, oh, I see you guys are a little disappointed. But then by the time Brian is done, Brian has won that room over. And sometimes you mix and match. We used to do it with Sam Prickett on urban shows, and he would be kind of skittish, but I think you learn about yourself after doing something like that. I perform in front of white audiences all the time. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this is going to be weird. They're not going to like it. They're not, you know, whatever. But that's not my job to do. I'm supposed to have, confidence in the work that I've put in and see what happens. And usually you learn more from yourself from a bad show than you do a great show. So it all works out in the end.
Well, they can do both crowds because those are two different spectrums. You know, when you deal with mainstream, you know, you have a wider market. When you deal with urban, you know, of course, your market is limited to just urban. Mainstream involves everybody, you know. So if a comedian is trying to get out there, I would suggest that he go mainstream, because the urban network is going to pick him up anyway.
I personally love female comics because I like dealing with underdogs. Like in football and basketball, underdogs is a better point spread. You get a better deal if you deal with the underdog. There's a lot of guys doing comedy. They're doing big things. They're doing it. It's funny and everything. But we still need to let it be known that there's some funny women out there. So in this world of society where everything is discriminated against, I would rather see a female comic because she's the underdog and give her that love.
In regards to like women, in particular black women, how do you help, or are you looking for more comedian black women?
Always. There aren't that many. If you go to these shows and you go look at lineups, when I go out to watch comedy, there aren't very many. There are some that have stood out to me that I know who have come to the open mic, but I wish that they would come out more, because you can go up and do one set and it can be great, or you can go and do one set and it can be horrible. That's just one set. I think that you don't get to know the basis of someone and what they're doing from one set. And you go out and watch them. I just don't think I don't know why, but women in general just don't really come out. And especially women of color. I don't know what that is.
Comedy festivals are cool. I think they're a way for you to get to see a lot of comics from all over. not just in North Carolina, like from all over. You get to see different kind of comedy. You get to see it all together on one stage. I think that's really beneficial for a lot of comics.
I want to say 200 comedians submitted to it. And that's all stand-up comedy, sketch, and improv groups. And then from there on, we had a cap. We were only going to pick about 70 stand-up comics. And there was a criteria we had to go by, and there's, a few judges that are looking at it. They would do the first cut, second cut, and then the final cut. So there is a link where the comedians would click to submit. They'll put their names, their stage names, their YouTube video, or whichever video they had to submit. We requested 5 to 8 minutes of stand-up. No reels, no best ofs, anything less than 4 minutes. We weren't going to watch, but if they did submit it, we would still watch it because, people paid to submit. Paying doesn't guarantee an automatic spot.
I applied for one. Yes, Oak City Comedy Festival. I didn't get picked, but hey, some of the great people don't get picked for a lot of things. So.
Being a comedian yourself and knowing a lot of those comedians that submitted, was it hard to reject the comedians that you knew?
It was hard for me because I'm really sensitive about what I produce, and also sensitive about the local scene and how, I actually wish that there were more comics from North Carolina that submitted. There were not. So it's like I could count on just one hand how many people submitted.
Yeah, I haven't really done too many festivals, or contests either for that matter. Contests, I feel like all of those are accolades along with anything else that you do as a comedian. Not until your name, gets up there. Those things are all still going to be accolades up under your belt, and all of them are good. But I've done a contest, but it was something. I was Comicville. He had a small contest, and the winner got to open up for a comedian, A.G. White and Cuba Ice. I won, and I got a chance to meet them by doing that. So a lot of different contests, they come with different perks, different wins. Some of them come with trophies, some of them come with mentions. So like I said, all of those are accolades, and some of them will get you booked. Some of those things will get you booked. So those are all good for comics to definitely try. I'm not gonna tell nobody not to. You do what you want to do to your own discretion. You do what you can and learn.
It wasn't a lie. I wish there were more, but it felt. I felt kind of sad that either one, the guidelines were not read properly, or they didn't submit what was asked. Sometimes I asked for, it says, like I said, 5 to 8 minutes. I got 3-minute reels. And I went out my way, before any other judge would see it, hey, can I get a 5-minute, 8-minute video? They would submit it, but it just didn't go through the final cut, and it made me really sad. Like I said, I wish I could say, yeah, because we're cool and we're friends and whatnot, let's just be on the show, be on the festival. But to be fair, there are other people who read the instructions, the guidelines. This is what you got to do.
The business side of it, I wish, especially female comedians, to understand that this is a career, or this is a job, it's your passion, but also it's business.
It's show business, and some people got the show, some people got the business. When it really works is when you got the show and the business part.